Welcome to Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda, Butterworth, and today we will continue with the epic tale of the Argonauts, beginning with the chapter, The Council of Argus. Jason and the two heroes he had brought with him rose from their seats. Only one of the sons of Phrixus followed him, Argus, who signed to his brothers to stay where they were at. But these others left the palace. About Jason hung a glow of beauty and grace. Medea's glances strayed toward him through her veil and dreamily followed every single move. When she was alone in her chamber again, the tears welled upon her lashes. "Why do I allow sorrow to beset my heart?" she asked herself. "How does this hero concern me, whether he be the foremost of the or the least of all the demigods? Let him die, if such be his lot. And yet, if only he could escape, so that his destruction, O Hecate, revered goddess, let him return home. But it is decreed that the bulls overpower him. Let him know before he goes to meet that I, at least, do not rejoice in this awful fate." While Medea was thus tormenting herself, the heroes were on their way to the ship, and Argus said to Jason, "Perhaps you will spurn my advice, but still I will give it to you. I know a girl who understands the brewing of magic potions, an art which Hecate, the goddess of the underworld, has taught her. If we could win her over to our side, I am certain that you would be victorious in this task. If you agree, I shall go and try to enlist her favor on your behalf." "Go if you like," said Jason. "I shall not prevent you, but we are in a sad way, and our homeward voyage depends on women." While they were talking, they had reached the Argo and their companions. Jason told them of the task which had been set, and of his promise to the king. For a little his friends sat exchanging mute glances. Finally, Pallas said, "If you believe that you are able to do what you have pledged, prepare yourself. But if you are not wholly confident of the outcome, stay away, nor look at any of these men to help you, for what could be in store for them but death?" At these words, Telamon and 4 other youths sprang up full of eager joy at the thought of a perilous adventure. But Argus quieted them and said, "I know one who is versed in magic. She is my mother's sister. Let me go to my mother and persuade her to win the girl over to our plans. Not only then is there any use in discussing the task which Jason has promised to perform." He had scarcely finished speaking when heaven granted them a sign. A dove, who was being pursued by a hawk, took refuge in Jason's lap, while the bird of prey, darting close behind, fell to the deck in the stern of the ship. Now, one of the heroes remembered that old Phineus had prophesied, among other things, that Aphrodite would aid them in returning home. So all agreed with Argus except Idas, the son of Aetherius, who rose to testify from his seat and said, "By the gods, have we come here as women's minions? Shall we invoke Aphrodite instead of turning to Ares? In the sight of hawks and doves to keep up from this battle? Very well. Forget about war, and win glory by deceiving weak maidens." Thus he spoke in anger, and many of the heroes agreed with him and murmured their disapproval of Jason's plan. But he decided in favor of Argus. The ship was moored to the shore, and the heroes awaited the return of their messenger. Meanwhile, Aeetes had called a gathering of the Coaxians outside the palace. He told his people of the arrival of the strangers and their demands, and the end he had in mind for them. As soon as the leader was killed by the bulls, he would have a whole forest of trees hewn and burn the ship with all her crew. And he would devise a terrible punishment for his grandsons, who had guided these adventurers to his country. While this was going on, Argus had sought out his mother and pleaded with her to enlist the aid of his sister Medea. Chalciope herself was filled with pity for the strangers, but had dared not face her father's rankings and displeasure, and so her son's request was welcome to her, and she promised to assist him. Medea lay on her couch in restless slumber, haunted by anxious dreams. She seemed to see Jason make ready to fight the bulls, only that he had not assumed the labor for the sake of the golden fleece, but to take her home to his country as his wife. In her dreams, it was she herself who got the better of the bulls, but her parents refused to keep their word and give Jason the promised prize, because not she, but he, should have yoked the beast. Her father and the strangers began to quarrel bitterly on this point, and both sides chose her as arbiter. And in her dream, she gave judgment in favor of the stranger. Her parents cried out in resentment and grief, and Medea awoke. The mood begot by her dreams drove her to her sister's apartment, but for a long time she dallied in the forecourt, ashamed and undecided. 3 times she went forward, 3 times she turned back, and at last she threw herself weeping on her own couch again. One of her trusted young handmaidens found her there, distraught and tearful, and filled with sympathy for her mistress, reported what she had seen to Chalciope. When the message reached her, she was sitting among her sons and discussing how they might win over Medea. She hastened to her sister and found her with her palms pressed to her cheeks and her breast shaken with sobs. "What has happened to you, dear sister?" she asked in deepest concern. "What sorrow is torturing your soul? Has a god afflicted you with some malady? Has our father slandered me and my sons to you? Oh, that I were far from the house of my parents, in a country where the name of Coaxing is never uttered." Medea promises to help the Argonauts. Medea, reddened at her sister's questions and shyness, kept silent. Now the words were on the tip of her tongue, now they retreated to the very core of her being. But love at last emboldened her, and craftily she said, "Chalciope, my heart grieves for your sons. I fear that our father may kill them together with the strangers. An anxious dream has given me these forebodings, but I pray that a god may prevent them from coming to be." These words filled Chalciope with great alarm. "I have come to you about this very matter," she said. I implore you to support me against your father. Should you refuse, my murdered sons and I will pursue you even from the underworld, and along with haunting you with the Furies." She clasped Medea's knees with both hands and buried her head in her lap, and the sisters mingled their tears. Then Medea said, "Why speak fury, sister? I swear to you by heaven and earth and whatever I can do to save your sons, that I will gladly do." "Well then," Chalciope countered, "for the sakes of my sons, consent to furnish the stranger with some device whereby he can survive the terrible ordeal with the bulls, for he has sent my son Argus to beg your help." Medea's heart danced with joy. Her lovely face flushed, and for a moment's giddiness clouding her shining eyes. Then she said impetuously, "Chalciope, may the dawn never again gladden my sight if I do not hold your life and that of your sons more dear than my own. For did not you, so my mother often told me, suckle me together with them when I was a tiny child? Therefore, I love you not only with a sister, but a daughter's love. Early tomorrow morning, I shall go to the temple of Hecate, and there fetch for the stranger the magic which shall tame the bulls." Chalciope left her sister's chamber and told her sons the welcome news. All night Medea struggled with herself. "Have I not pledged too much? She said, "May I do all this for a stranger? See and touch him with no one near? For this is necessary if the ruse is to succeed. Yes, I shall save his life. Let him go where he will. But on the day of his victory I shall die. A rope of poison will serve to free me from this existence I now loathe. But will not vicious rumors pursue me over all the land of Colchis? Will they not whisper that I disgrace my house by dying for the love of a stranger?" With these tangled thoughts in her head, she went to fetch a small box which contained those herbs and the cure at those that kill. She set it on her knees and had already opened it to taste of deadly poison when she remembered all the vexing sweetness of life, all of its delights, all of her playmates. The sun seemed fairer to her than before, and she shivered with unconquerable fear of death and put the casket down on the floor. Hera, Jason's patron goddess, had changed her heart. She could hardly wait for the dawn to brew the promised magic and bring it to the hero whom she had come to love. Jason and Medea. Argus hurried to the ship with his joyful message, and when dawn had only just streaked the sky with light, Medea leaped from her couch, combed and bound her blonde locks, which in her grief had hung matted about her cheeks, washed the traces of tears from her face, and anointed herself with precious oils. She put on a splendid robe, fastened with curved golden clasps, and threw a white veil over her radiant head. All sadness was forgotten. She ran through the halls on nimble feet, and bade her handmaids, 12 in number, yoke the mules to the chariot which was taken her to the temple of Hecate. While this was being done, Medea took from her box an ointment called Prometheus oil. Whoever salved his body with it, after offering a prayer to the goddess of the underworld, could not on that day be either wounded by a blade or scorched by fire, but would indeed be able to defeat their opponent. The ointment was prepared from the black sap of a root nourished by the blood oozing down the grassy slopes of the Caucasus from the gashed liver of Prometheus. Medea herself had caught the sap of that plant in a shell and hoarded it as a rare and potent remedy. The chariot was ready. 2 of her handmaids mounted it with their mistress, and herself held the reins and the goad and drove through the city, while the others accompanied her on foot. And all along their course the people reverently stepped aside to let the king's daughter pass. When she had crossed the open field and reached the temple, Medea sprang lightly from the chariot and spoke to her maidens with wily deceit. "I think I have done a great wrong in not keeping away from the strangers who came to our country, and now on top of this my sister and her son Argus have requested me to accept gifts from their leader and make him invulnerable by magic charms. I pretended to assent, and asked him to come to this temple where I can see him alone. When he arrives, I shall take the gifts which we shall later divide amongst ourselves, but offer him a potion which will hasten his destruction. Now go, lest he suspect a plot, for I told him I would receive him alone." The girls were well pleased with her plan. When they dispersed within the temple, Argus and his friend Jason set out on their way, and Mopsus, the soothsayer, went with them. No mortal, not even a child of the gods, had ever been as beautiful as Hera on this day. Jason, she endowed him with all gifts of the graces. Whenever his 2 companions glanced sideways, they wondered at his radiance, as if a star had taken on a human form. Medea, meanwhile, waited in the temple with her maidens, and although they tried to shorten the time with singing, their mistress was intent upon such very different matters that no song pleased her for very long. Her eyes did not dwell upon her handmaids, but roved longingly through the temple gate and across the road. At every passing step, at every rustle of wind, she eagerly raised her head. It was not long before Jason entered the temple, tall and fair as Cyrus rising from the sea. It seemed to Medea that her heart fluttered out of her breast. The world turned black before her eyes, and the hot blood surged into her cheeks. Her handmaids had left her. For a long time, the hero and the king's daughter faced each other in silence. They were like two slender oaks which stand close to each other, deep-rooted in the hills, with the air windless around them. But suddenly, a storm comes, and all the leaves tremble and move and toss on their stems. So these two, touched by love, exchanged words quickly with emotion. Jason was the first to break the silence. "Why do you fear me now that I am alone with you?" he asked. "I am not boastful like other men, and never was, even at home. Do not fear to ask and to say whatever your heart bids you. But remember that we are in a holy place, where a lie would be blasphemous. Therefore, do not deceive me with vain words. I come as a suppliant to beg you for the charm you promised your sister to give me. Harsh necessity compels me to seek your help. Ask what you like in return, and know that the aid you give will dispel the darkness of my companions, mothers, and wives, who are perhaps already mourning us on the shores of our country, and that undying glory will be yours in Greece." The girl allowed him to finish. She lowered her lids, and a faint smile touched her mouth. Her heart rejoiced in his praise. She looked up at him, and words crowded to her lips. She would have liked to say anything at once, but love numbed her tongue. So she only drew the small box from its perfumed wrappings. He took it from his hands in glad haste, but she would willingly have given him her very soul had he asked it. For Eros was kindling flames of sweet desire from Jason's golden locks, and she caught their light and fragrance. Her spirit warmed as the dew on roses begins to glow in the beams of morning light. Both looked down under their lashes. It was only after a long time and great effort that Medea spoke. "Listen, I shall tell you what you must do. After my father has given you the terrible dragon's teeth for sowing, bathe alone in the waters of the river, put on black garments, and dig a circular pit. Within this heap a pyre, slaughter a ewe lamb, and burn it to ash. Then, after a libation of honey to Hecate, dripping it from your cup, and leave the pyre, do not turn around for any step you may hear, or for the bark of a dog, otherwise the sacrifice will be in vain. The following morning, salve yourself with this magic ointment. It bestows great power and incredible strength. You will feel equal not only to men, but even to immortals. You must also anoint your lasts, your sword and your shield, and then no metal directed by human hands and no flame launched by magic bulls will be able to harm you or withstand you. This will only last for one day, but I shall give you still another aid. When you have yoked these enormous bulls and plowed the field, when the dragon's seed has borne harvest, throw a great stone among the earthborn men. They will fight for it like dogs for a crust of bread, and while they are so engaged, you can rush upon them and kill them. Then you may go and take the golden fleece away from Colchis unhindered, and go, yes, go wherever you please." She spoke, and furtive tears trickled down her cheek as she thought of this noble hero sailing far over the sea. She continued mournfully and took him by the hand, for her pain made her forget what she was doing. "When you reach home, Do not forget the name of Medea. I too will think of you when you are gone. And now tell me the name of that land to which you will return in that beautiful ship." While the girl was talking, Jason was overcome with irresistible love for her and broke out impetuously, "Noble princess, should I escape death, not a day will pass, not an hour, that I will not remember you. My home is Iolcus, on Haemonia, where Deucalion, the son of Prometheus, founded many cities and built many temples. In that place, not even the name of your country is known." "So you live in Greece?" said the girl. "Perhaps men are more hospitable there than here. Do not tell them how you received in Colchis, and remember me when you are alone. As for me, I shall think of you when everyone else here has forgotten. But I shall not forget. Oh, that a wind could carry me on a bird to Iolcus, through which I could remind you that you escaped by my help. Oh, that I myself were in your house, and that I could remind you in person." And she burst into tears. "Let winds blow and birds fly," answered Jason. "This is idle talk. But if you yourself came to Greece and to my home, how both women and men would honor you, even worship you as a goddess, because through you their sons and brothers and husbands escaped death and returned to their native land safe and sound. And yes, you would belong to me, and to me alone, and nothing but death could end our love." Her soul melted at his words, but at the same time, she was dimly aware of how terrible it is to leave one's country. Yet she was drawn toward Greece with compelling force, for Hera had set yearning into her heart. The goddess wanted Medea to leave Colchis and to go to Iolcus to bring destruction to Peleus. In the meantime, the maidens waited for their mistress and were silent and sad, since the time for her return was long past. She herself would have forgotten to go home for very delight in their exchange of heartful words, had not Jason, who was more cautious, reminded her. But even he did not think of it till it was rather late. "The time for parting has come," he said at last, "lest the sun set and we still be here and the other suspect some plot. Let's meet again in this place." Here ends my tale for today, but I'll be back tomorrow with more tales, many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.